Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Rich Life. Today's topic is one that I've been meaning to do on the show for a very long time: how to channel your pain into your purpose, which then becomes your power. And I'm joined by a very special guest today, Cassandra Trimnell, who's going to tell us how she turned being a sickle cell warrior, being diagnosed with sickle cell disease from birth, how she turned that into her life's purpose, her life's work, which has become her power. She didn't let that hold her back. She didn't let that hold her down. In fact, she used that to propel her into what's now a global platform where she runs an organization, Sickle Cell 101, that educates people around the world about sickle cell disease. So I want you to stay tuned. We're going to be right back with lots of great life tips for how you can learn from Cassandra to channel whatever you're going through into your purpose and into your power. Welcome to the show, Cassandra.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
You are so welcome. I'm so happy to have you here. I know that you have been super busy. You are running Sickle Cell 101 Foundation. You're building a social media empire. And what might be the most difficult right now, I'm not sure, you are homeschooling your 6-year-old daughter.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
know. Yeah, I know the feeling. But
Yes.
before all of that, you actually were diagnosed with sickle cell, which is what we're going to talk a lot about today, how you turned your pain into purpose. So why don't you tell us about that, the moment that you found out that you have sickle cell disease? And also for our viewers who don't know what exactly sickle cell is, why don't you tell us a little bit about that too?
So sickle cell disease is a genetic blood disorder, which means it's passed down from parent to child, and it's characterized by a crescent-shaped red blood cell. So normal red blood cells are round and squishy, but within sickle cell, those round and squishy blood cells turn into crescent and fragile red blood cells that are difficult to maneuver through blood vessels. Those red blood cells ultimately get kind of stuck within blood vessels and they start to build up, which causes this immense amount of pain. And so that's the characteristic feature of sickle cell disease, is that sickle shaped red blood cell, and then of course the pain.
When were you diagnosed with sickle cell
Yes.
disease?
Yeah. So I was diagnosed at birth, actually. So I knew,
Okay.
through the Iowa newborn screening program. So I was born in Iowa. And I was actually the first child diagnosed through the Iowa newborn screening program with sickle cell disease. So that's something I've always known. There's a lot of people you'll hear out there who don't always know that they're diagnosed, or aren't diagnosed until like later on in life and later on in adulthood. But I've always known that I had sickle cell disease.
Okay. And what was that like growing up, knowing that you had sickle cell disease, knowing that was always a part of your life?
What really hit me was there's a research project that I had to do in middle school, or a science project, I should say. And of course, I chose sickle cell as my topic, and I started doing research and looking into it. And I found that the life expectancy was up to 42 years old. And so that's kind of when it hit me like a ton of brick, like, wow, this is something very, very serious. Like, I cannot believe, I asked, my mom, like, about this. Is this true? And she's like, everything's in God's hands. But that's kind of where it really sunk in. It was like, wow, what I'm living with is really serious.
So then how
Right.
did that impact you as you were growing up as an adolescent and then growing into adulthood? How did that shape kind of your outlook on life?
So I read that and I put it back and I left it there, and decided that's not for me, and I went on. And that's kind of how, you'll read a lot of really scary things about sickle cell disease on the internet, or you hear doctors talk about it in a way that just doesn't sound like, it doesn't sit well with you, and you kind of just take it and you receive it, and then you kind of let it go, and you're like, that's not for me, this is my path. And that's kind of how I've navigated the disease even up until today.
I love that. And I think that's so widely applicable to anything you're dealing with in life that comes at you. Like, okay, this is what I read, but this is not what my reality has to be. And I think it starts with that mindset.
That's how I've gotten, that's where how I got to where I am today. I think there are a lot of people with sickle cell disease who are kind of given an expiration date, if you will, where doctors tell them you're not going to live past 18 or you're not going to live past 25. And so, when you're told that, especially at a young age, and you kind of go through life thinking, well, what am I supposed to do until then? Like if this is when I'm supposed to die. And then you'll find a lot of people who make it past that age and they're like, well, now what? Like I didn't plan for any of this, like I've passed the age that doctor said. Now what am I supposed to do? So yeah, you just really have to take those types of that type of information with a grain of salt, and live your life.
I absolutely love that. And what I love even more than that is that you didn't keep that to yourself. Tell us about how your experience led you to channel that into what's now become essentially your life's work with Sickle Cell 101 and all the other things that you're doing around educating people about sickle cell disease.
Yeah, so I think in college, just going with the same theme of, how I'd always choose sickle cell as a science project. Just growing up with it, you learn a lot. You learn a lot of technical information. And so I was like, I'm going to be a bio major. I know how this was passed down to me. Like, I know like the basics of biology, and this is something I'm really interested in. So in college, I was a bio major, and I was really looking to get into it to learn more about my disease. And so when I finally got there and sickle cell was finally mentioned, it was like 2 short sentences in a textbook, and it talks about like Mendel's piece. I don't know, and I don't want to get nerdy here, but how
I remember that though. I do.
You do, right?
Yeah.
The Mendel's piece, and how traits are passed on from parent to child, and then that was it. And I kind of felt shortchanged. I was like, oh wow. So I think I went into and I turned to Google and found a lot of research papers and kind of just taught myself about this disease. And at the time, I was on Instagram and I found that there's a broad sickle cell community on social media, specifically on Instagram. And so I shared that information that I was, learning about sickle cell, because I was like, if I don't know, who else doesn't know?
Mm-hmm.
And I started sharing it on Instagram, and it kind of just took off from there. Essentially, Sickle Cell 101 is a nonprofit organization specialized in sickle cell education. So we find that, there are a lot of people on social media. Some don't know their genotype. Some don't know if they have sickle cell trait or sickle cell disease. So we're really just trying to fill in that knowledge gap and share that information that's essential for people living with sickle cell disease. We also provide information for caregivers, for healthcare providers, for anyone who's just really looking to get information about sickle cell disease and sickle cell trait.
And I think too, another audience would include people like me who don't have any direct experience with sickle cell disease, except for meeting great people like you. And I don't know, Ramon Reed, he was on my show too. Yeah, from Disney.
Yeah.
So, but what I found is that when I go through your social media, your Instagram feed, I learn so much as a person who is on the outside, but I feel like the stories you share draw me in, just seeing what people are going through. I mean, it's so powerful. I saw this one, let me see if I can remember it. Pain does not mean the absence of joy. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, that's perfect.
So I saw someone share that about, and what was the prompt? Was it what sickle cell has taught me?
Yes.
And so I felt schooled too. I was like, wow, this is so powerful, not just in the world of sickle cell, which of course I was appreciating through your feed, but in life in general, right? Pain, whether it's physical pain or emotional or mental pain. it doesn't have to mean the absence of joy. And I scrolled through and I saw so many people who had joy, even in the midst of the pain that they were dealing with sickle cell. And this is a community that you created. I'm so proud of you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. You know, that person just articulated it perfectly. Like they assigned those words so perfectly. And it really does, like, you know, and that was my favorite quote that we
Oh,
got. We got a lot of great responses from the community, but that was my favorite quote of it because, you know, living with sickle cell, I think that the 30% of us live with live 95% of our days in pain. That's
wow.
being in pain a lot. So
Yeah.
even in that pain, you have to be able to find the little things that make you happy, whether it's spending time with your family. Like with me and my daughter is hilarious to me. And even though I'm in, like, you know, if I'm having pain in my arm, I'm still able to laugh with her and have fun with her. And so I think a lot of us associate with, you know, pain with bad and like bad quality of life, and you just can't do anything and restrictive. And you know, and it's you know, if it's intense enough, that is the case, but you have to make it work somehow because you have a life to live at the end of the day, and you want to have the get the most out of your life. And so just that, thank you to that person
Yeah.
who put that so beautifully, because that's exactly my motto in life.
Yes, yes. Is there any other advice that you would share with the audience about your experience and how anyone out there who's going through a sickle cell or any other form of pain, again, not just physical pain, but emotional pain, any other advice that you would share with them about how they can not only deal with their present circumstances, but channel that into something that has a greater purpose?
Pain, you can really use, if used in the right way, pain can be your power, you know. um, I think there was an example that was given where it's like, you know, because we live sickle cell, we have our own personal crises all the time.
Mhm.
That when a pandemic hits, for example, it's nothing to us because, you know, this is something, you know, everybody else is freaking out and, you know, can't figure out how life works, but we're just kind of cruising by like, you know, this is fine, you know, we've been through worse. And so pain, if you can see pain as power and wield it in that way, you know, I think that becomes our superpower at the end of the day.
I hope that everyone out there has learned a whole lot from this. Not only our sickle cell warriors out there who are watching, I hope that you all will join the Sickle Cell 101 community. But for everyone else too, I hope that you have gotten a lot from these nuggets of wisdom that Cassandra has so graciously dropped on us today. Cassandra, why don't you tell us how we can follow you, how we can learn more about Sickle Cell 101, how we can share it with our friends and family? Because another thing too that people don't realize is that just because you don't have the sickle cell disease does not mean that you don't carry the trait. So we also need to know
Absolutely.
about that as well, right?
Absolutely. If you have, you know, usually when I talk, especially within the Black community, when I talk with someone, oh, I know someone with sickle cell, or my cousin had sickle cell. Um, if your cousin had sickle cell, that whole family should get tested for sickle cell trait because sickle cell trait is within that family. So
Hmm.
just make sure, just everybody get tested for sickle cell trait. You can access through your newborn screening program. If you did not get screened at birth, you can always ask your primary care physician for a simple blood test that can um, detect, you know, different sorts of sickle cell diseases. Just make sure you know your genotype because most people don't know that they have sickle cell trait until they have a child with sickle cell disease. And that's, I think that the statistic is only 16% of Americans know that they have sickle cell trait. And there's 3 million Americans out there with sickle cell trait.
That is so important. And if we want more information on how to
Yeah,
actually do that, or if we forget anything, we can always go to Sickle Cell 101, right? So tell us how we can find you.
absolutely. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and we're on Twitter. You can also send us a message at info@sc101.org. And we have we have a lot of expert physicians if you have any technical questions. And yeah, we're just, you can visit our website, sc101.org, and you can connect with us that way as well.
Thank you again for joining us. Please, everyone out there, if you have any questions, use the resources at Sickle Cell 101. And to anyone who's watching, and if you haven't already subscribed to the Riche Life, make sure that you do that as well so that you can stay up to date with all of the latest. Until next time, take care, everybody.